WarCenter.
Hello and welcome to WarCenter.
Tonight, we start by taking a look at the 7 Years' War. It went into double overtime, taking a total of 9 years in the New World. Isn't that right, Jonny?
Yes, that's right. Great Britain bested the French and Spanish last night, consolidating their holdings in North America.
The French have been nearly completely kicked out of the New World. But there's another story here, not so well known. The effect this war has had on Britain's minor league team, America. For that, we'll go to Eddy.
Well, Teddy, the colonists took on the Indians at the same time and still came out on top. This victory and the newly found independence is really going to make the British look back on the Americans, who are in a great position to get moved up into the National League.
Thanks, Eddy. You know, Jonny, becoming a nation would be a huge step for this small country.
It absolutely would, Teddy. These British colonies have come so far in the past few hundred years. All the way on the other side of the world and managing to put up victories like this will be something to watch, guys.
It sure will. We'll see you next time on WarCenter.
This is WarCenter.
Hello, and welcome to WarCenter.
Earlier, in a huge upset, America, but I believe they're calling themselves United States now, beat Great Britain, their former owners, in the first war of the best-of-3 series. We'll get the results of the second war in a moment, but first, let's just talk for a second about the first war, which the Americans, United Statesers? No, are calling the Revolutionary War.
Certainly, Jonny. In a gutsy war, the Americans just stuck it out for longer than the British, and simply outmaneuvered them in a brilliant display of cooperation with the French at the Battle of Yorktown. Speaking of the French, the Americans also out-diplomatized the British, sending Benjamin Franklin to negotiate with the French for aid.
It was absolutely a huge upset, though. However, the Americans still need to win the second war. And, so I understand, they went through a pretty major change for the second war. Isn't that right, Eddy?
It certainly is. They've also gone through several head coaches, including George Washington all the way through James Madison. They've also done some major acquisitions, including signing several new states and making the Louisiana Purchase, which includes not only Louisiana, but the Midwest. This is putting them in a great position for the beginning of 1812.
But did all this help them win the second round?
There's no doubt about it, Jonny. The Americans have beaten Britain again and have shown that they are the undisputed leaders of the new Western Hemisphere Conference.
The Americans seem to be dominating this season so far. The new team is off to a perfect record, and it looks like they aren't slowing down. But all their wars so far have been at home, so we'll have to see how they fare abroad.
Yes, that will be important going into the future. See you next time on WarCenter.
This is WarCenter.
Hello, and welcome to WarCenter, now broadcasting live from our new studios in the United States of America.
Tonight, we will be talking about several major wars the United States has been involved in the last few decades, as well as some of their notable recent off-battlefield moves. In late 1845, the United States signed Texas, a free agent. This acquisition surprised some analysts due to some of Texas's problems, such as slavery. But now, most agree that this has significantly increased the U.S.'s military strength and was the first indicator of possible aggression towards Mexico.
And boy, did we see aggression towards Mexico. America swept Mexico in 1846, taking all of Mexico's northern lands, including California and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. America really gained a lot, cementing their position at the top of the Western Hemisphere Conference. But all this new expansion and an ongoing slavery problem in their southern states really caused a huge split in the country.
A huge split, Teddy? I think that's an understatement. The Americans have had a full-on civil war, and this ain't no rivalry in Oregon. This is a full-on war. Brother against brother, north against south. The winner of this decides the whole fate of the government and how it's going to work moving forward. And in 1865, the North did just that. How did they change the nation in the Civil War, Teddy?
Well, Eddy, the North have decided that the South have no right to split up their team because of the contract. But the South said being treated unfair was not a part of the Constitution when they signed it.
Yes, the Americans seem to be overthrowing all kinds of rulers they dislike lately. Isn't that right, Teddy?
Right you are, Eddie. Remember to call 1-800-BULL-RUN because you could receive 2 free tickets to the upcoming Battle of Bull Run. Breaking news! The South has just surrendered to the North. It looks like it's a Cinderella story for the South, as they will be going home early and disappointed.
This will return the Americans' team to its former glory. They will need some time to recover, but I think that America could actually have grown stronger from this experience.
This is a great achievement for this young new country, being able to overcome being split into 2 sections and being returned to more than its former glory. Well, that's all for this time. Tune in soon for the newest updates in U.S. history on WarCenter.
This is WarCenter.
Hello and welcome to WarCenter. Today we have a story of the greatest tournament in the history of war, the War of Wars. In 1917, the first took place in the series that will go down in history as the largest series to ever have happened. Yes, this will impact the world in dramatic ways, and it may even shift the balance of power towards the Americans. This would be a great victory for America if they can pull it off. But as we know, America is going through a depression. If America is able to win this series, they will become one of the world's superpowers and be recognized as one of the greatest teams ever. Let's go to Teddy to see what his views are on this new tournament.
Well, America has beaten the odds. They've survived division and wars with England, and in 1917 they were either going to prove their dominance or go home unhappy.
And how did it work out for them?
Well, America won the war quite handily. Granted, their main contribution was economic, but I think that's the real strength of this country. They can make more money and produce more stuff than any other country out there.
That's amazing. But this American system really work? It seems to be failing them right now. As I understand, they're in a terrible economic depression. Well, that's true. They've partied hard in the 20s, and they're paying the price now. But I think they'll wake up in time for tonight's World War II. Perhaps a little war is just what they need to get their economy going again. Speaking of which, can we get the update on the score, Johnny? Well, Eddie, the Americans and the British, Soviet, and French allies have all but knocked out the Germans, repulsing them at the Battle of Bulge. And they've just taken Berlin. Germany is out for the count. Amazing. Little old American and allies taking out Germany. Though, what about Japan? I guess the Soviets and the Americans are going to have to figure out how to get along now that they've met in Berlin. And don't forget, the American coach has just passed away, so it could take a little while. I do see all the coaches meeting on the sidelines in post-dem, though. What are they planning? Ooh, America has just used a nuclear weapon on Japan, and the Soviets are sweeping through from the east. And America drops another nuke, and Japan surrenders. It's all over, ladies and gentlemen. America has won. Thank you for staying with us. Be with us next time on WarCenter.
This is WarCenter.
Hello, and welcome to WarCenter. America's increased affluence after the surprise win the Second World War has allowed us to remodel our studios.
I've even been able to afford a new haircut. Anyway, America's doing pretty good these days. How's the rest of the world doing, Johnny?
Well, Europe's doing not too bad, but Russia really seems to have overcome their issues and are emerging as the main rival to the U.S. this season. And the new nuclear weapons sure seem to have changed the way the war is fought. For that, we'll go to Ed.
Thanks, Johnny. The Cold War stays cold because neither country can afford a nuclear conflict. It's turned into an arms race where America and the Soviet Union are both trying to one-up each other by building new nuclear weapons.
Thanks, Ed. So, Johnny, would you say that this is a war fought with dollars and rubles instead of guns and tanks?
You could say that, except that America's policy of containment has led them into several very real conflicts, and I'm afraid they're not doing too well in those.
Oh, yes. Korea and Vietnam. The Americans have really outdone themselves this time, taking the war into smaller countries to try and keep the Soviet influence out of them. However, as we all know, Korea ended up in a draw due to a surprise last-minute push by the North Koreans and the Chinese, pushing the border right back to where it started.
So, America's proxy war didn't turn out so well, did it? And it just went downhill from there, as the next time, in Vietnam, they were eventually forced to concede. The war was difficult and confusing for Americans, and very unpopular with the fans at home. And then there was the trouble with the American coach.
Of course, Coach Nixon resorted to some dirty play, as he lied to his own players and fans in order to get an advantage in Vietnam to try and keep his job. He was later forced to resign in disgrace.
Absolutely. But let's talk about how the Cold War ended. The Americans eventually managed to pull themselves out of their slump and really started taking the arms race to the Soviets. Apparently, the Soviets tried to restructure their economic game plan to be more like the American, but it backfired.
Yep, the players saw their chances, started to rebel, and the team just broke up. This war was won for the Americans on the economic side of affairs, as they just outspent every other team around. Capitalism's good for that, you know.
It sure is. We'll have to see what they accomplish on the next episode of WarCenter.
This is WarCenter.
Hello, and welcome to WarCenter. Tonight we have an incredible win for America. This win has lifted America out of their recent slump in conventional wars.
Yes, America seems to have been fully recovered and has crushed their enemies in Operation Desert Storm. The coalition has lost under 400 soldiers, whereas Iraq and Kuwait has lost over 20,000 soldiers.
If America keeps this up, they'll have no one to fight. Breaking news! America has now been attacked! The Twin Towers have been bombed. This is a terrible loss for America, and most teams are criticizing Al-Qaeda for a cheap shot, killing 3,000 American citizens.
America is outraged, and it looks like they will be going to war with the terrorists. They will be going to Afghanistan and extending into Iraq. Let's go to Jonny for the news. While attacking the Taliban in Afghanistan seemed like a good idea, the terrorists just aren't in Iraq. It just looks like the U.S. is trying to finish what they started in Operation Desert Storm. But this will be much harder to win now that the terrorists are spread out. And how will this affect America at home? This will surely give America trouble as they head into the war on terror. It might even end up in an economic depression, which would not be good for the American people.
Thanks, Johnny. The war in Afghanistan continues, and has brought the United States in conflict sometimes with Pakistan, where many terrorists continue to hide. However, just now, the issue with American strikes into Pakistan has been brought to the fore, as a helicopter raid has just killed Al-Qaeda's star player, Osama bin Laden.
This is a huge play for the United States, though some have criticized the U.S., calling it a dirty play, but this seems really legitimate, and raises some serious questions about Pakistan and terror.
It remains to be seen how much this will actually help the Americans going forward, but bin Laden's death does make the terrorists look much weaker. We'll tell you about what happens next on WarCenter.
This was a triumph. I'm making a note here, huge success. It's hard to overstate my satisfaction.